What's up everyone, welcome to the video. We are here talking week 5 of the NFL season on DraftKings and FanDuel. And if this is your first time here, what's up? My name is Pennell, and what I pretty much do in these videos, I look at a player pool, just some of my favorite players in each position. I'm going to break down every single player on the slate. We'll build a single entry-ish tournament lineup as we progress through to see what fits, and then run the optimizer at the end, which includes some projections and ownership projections of mine to see who's popping the most as of right now. And if you think that sounds good, you can do me a favor by leaving a like down below and subscribe to the channel, hit that bell so you know whenever I post new content. And feel free to leave a comment down below saying whatever you want to say because I have no control over you. Just try not to be too mean. And don't forget to check out the sponsor of the show, PrizePicks, because they do make these videos possible. And as of right now, if you're new signing over on the website, you can use promo code CPEN. Take advantage of the instant deposit match bonus up to $100. There's no strings attached. It is free money. Use it to your advantage. Highly recommend playing over on the site. I play on it each and every single week. I have a blast. I don't live in a legal betting state, so if you don't either, make sure you're eligible, but it's a really nice, fun work around that. But you can take advantage of that deal either on PrizePicks.com. You can use the link down below in the description. But with that being said, I think that's it for the plugs. So without further ado, let's dive right into it. And as always, we will start with the quarterback position. And if you do want access to the spreadsheet that I'm previewing for free here for you guys on YouTube, link is down below in the description for that. It's got the entire player pool and just a few guys that I'm interested in, all the stats you need, color coded nice and neat, so it's nice and easy to follow. Projections, cheat sheet, optimizer, ownership projections, everything you need to help you on Sundays or Thursdays or Mondays or even Saturdays later on in the season, covering the NBA here soon and NASCAR. So a bunch of content over there. You can use the link down below and come join if you want. Anyway, let's talk some quarterbacks here. We got the most expensive one up top, Josh Allen, $8,200 on DraftKings, $9K over on FanDuel. And the Bills have the highest implied team total on the slate here, coming in at 30.25 at home, facing the Pittsburgh Steelers and their new rookie quarterback, Kenny Pickett. Probably going to be a tough spot here for the Steelers, so I'm not expecting too much resistance. They are 14-point favorites. It's a 2-touchdown favorite. So a lot of people get worried with teams that you're trying to stack up, especially with the passing offense, when they're big favorites like this, because they assume they're going to end up blowing these guys out and they're not going to throw the ball as much. But my counterpoint to that is always, well, if they do end up blowing out the opposing team, I'm sure Josh Allen's going to have a big part of that. If you guys remember, was it week 2, I believe, where they were facing the Titans? The Bills absolutely blew them out, and we ended up having the second string quarterback come in. But Allen and Diggs both had phenomenal days. Like, you needed them on that slate to do well. So if they do blow out the Steelers, which I think is a likely scenario, it's never a given. There's so much parity in the NFL. It's another reason why I don't want to, fade a team because they're such a large favorite. So if the Bills end up hitting that 30-point implied team total, I wouldn't be surprised if they go past that. Allen probably had a good day, even if he doesn't have to go all out the entire game. I am fine with 3 quarters or 3.5 quarters of some amazing Josh Allen work. So I have no problem with him. 14-point favorites here, but on the season, 306 passing yards per game, 2.5 passing touchdowns, throwing the ball nearly 40 times per game with close to an 80% completion percentage. Then you have the built-in rushing floor as well, which is nearly at 50, which is kind of a built-in rushing touchdown just because of the rushing yards he gets you each and every single week, and he's always going to be a threat around the goal line as well. So loving Josh Allen here. Now, he is going to be one of the highest owned quarterbacks in the entire slate, so you always have to keep that in mind. But overall, just projection-wise, he's going to grade out the best. The only thing you'd really have to worry about is ownership, but I mean, I'm fine with it. You can get different elsewhere in your lineup, and Allen's always going to be playable. And Jalen Hurts, a very similar play to Josh Allen. He finds himself in at least a closer spread here at 5 points, 26.75 implied team total on the road in the Dome in Arizona, 48.5 point over-under here. And on the season, Jalen Hurts has obviously been very, very good. A lot better in the passing game than what I expected. 280 passing yards per game. Only a passing touchdown and throwing the ball less than 30 times per game, but at 9.1 yards per attempt compared to 7.3. For Josh Allen, very high completion percentage, and he too is excellent on the ground, which gives him a great floor. So both these guys, excellent plays. I typically play 3 max on DraftKings. I do 150 on FanDuel, just personal preference there. But for Jalen Hurts, I'm probably going to do a 3 max that includes Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts, and then the third lineup will probably either be Tom Brady, Trevor Lawrence, who we're about to talk about. But, I mean, I like these guys both a lot. They're both project out pretty similar to me. Allen's just a little bit higher. They do have the higher implied team total, but I have no problem with Hurts here. I mean, excellent on the ground, great through the air, and the Cardinals are 20th DVA versus the pass this season, and bottom half in the league when it comes to fantasy points allowed per game to the quarterback position. And it's pretty easy to stack with Jalen Hurts as well. You have A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, and then Dallas Goedert, and it's pretty simple. Then moving down to our cheaper quarterbacks, we have Tom Brady at $6,000. Now, earlier in the week, I thought Brady would be the cash game lock at quarterback at this price point. But I do think it's actually pretty easy to fit in guys like Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts on this slate. So I'm still fine with him in cash games, but I don't think it's a necessity, especially if you can't afford one of these top-end quarterbacks, because they've just been absolutely killing it this season. But I like the price point on Brady. This is the cheapest I have. Well, I mean, I don't know if I've ever seen him in the 5K range, to be honest, at least the past few seasons. So this is a really cheap price point. He had a fantastic game versus the Chiefs. 28.25 implied team total here, 10-point favorites, and facing the Atlanta Falcons defense, which I don't really have any concerns about. They're 23rd versus quarterbacks this season, and bottom half in the league DVOA-wise versus the pass. And it's very easy to stack with Brady, especially at this price point. And Chris Godwin, I believe, is in the 5K range, which is silly. Mike Evans isn't overly expensive. So yeah, the Bucs stack, it looks really good. They have one of the higher implied team totals, and they're really not that expensive either. Then Trevor Lawrence, $5,600. I think he's a pretty interesting tournament play. I would say of all the cheap quarterbacks this week, excluding Tom Brady, he would be my favorite of the bunch. Only a 43.5 point over-under in this game. Jacksonville, Houston doesn't really get you too excited, but there is some pretty fun fantasy options, at least in this game. And a decent 25.25 implied team total here for Jacksonville. They do find themselves at 7-point favorites at home. And while Lawrence isn't really killing it in the yardage department this season, only 236 passing yards per game, is it 2 passing touchdowns, and it's really easy to stack them up with Christian Kirk and then run it back with like a Brandon Cooks, for example. So I am liking the price point here, but for $400 more, it does feel a lot more secure using Tom Brady. And moving over to our lineup, we have 4 quarterback options, at least in my opinion, that we could go with. I'm going to go the Tom Brady route. It just allows us some more flexibility. Again, no problem with Allen, no problem with Hurts. I will have lineups with those guys, but for this one, we're going with Brady, and it's pretty easy to stack up. And moving on to the running backs, actually a decent list of viable options. Usually I have like 3 guys here, 4 of them, and then like 2 of them are actually playable. But we have a decent amount this week, so at least that gives us some more options than normal. But up top, start with Dalvin Cook, $7,300. He's getting the volume this year, just not really turning into too many fantasy points. Does have the 1 touchdown, but hasn't been great. Under 16 rushing attempts per game, under 70 rushing yards, only 4.4 yards per carry, not really heavily involved in the passing game either. But this game does set up pretty well for him at home versus Chicago. They are 7.5-point favorites here. A near 26-point implied team total. And the Bears defensively versus the run have not been great this season. 24th DVOA and also 24th in fantasy points allowed per game. To the running back position and nearly 130 rushing yards per game. So I think Cook, if you have the money, is in a decent spot, although it hasn't been great from him this year. But I said the same thing about Austin Eckler last week, and he ended up having his by far best game. So at some point, Dalvin Cook, I'm sure, will have a blow-up game. Leonard Fournette, $6,900. He's going to be a very popular option this week, especially in cash games. So it makes sense. He's at home. He's a 10-point favorite, 28.25 implied team total, decent over-under, and he's just heavily involved in the offense. I mean, 15 carries per game on nearly 5 targets. Although he did mention he wants to get some of the other backs involved more just to preserve his body a little bit, but even then, the volume is still going to be fine from him. He is close to $7,000, so he's not as cheap as he was, but overall, I understand the idea of wanting to play Leonard Fournette. But in the specific lineup we are going with, we're not going to play him. I know it's fine, you can play Fournette with Tom Brady because of his work in the passing game, but I'm already going to be kind of chalky with the stack. So we'll leave off Fournette, but I think he's an excellent option. Alvin Kamara, $6,600. He'll return from injury this week, facing off versus Seattle, a defense that doesn't really offer too much resistance just about anywhere. And Kamara also had 7 targets in his last game. So he's going to be involved in the passing game. He had 12 carries per game, but we're looking at a very small sample size for Kamara this season. But the matchup's great. I'm not a huge matchup guy, but when the matchup's good, I mean, it's obviously good to have at least. But they're allowing the second most points per game in the running back position, 19th DVOA versus the run, and over 130 rushing yards per game. So Kamara at this price point, this is really cheap for him. He's another guy that I think will be pretty popular in cash games, and a guy that I think you can roster in just about any format. Jamal Williams, $6,500. DeAndre Swift is not officially out, but it seems like he is trending that way. Has not practiced all week. And while Williams isn't as cheap as he was last week, at $6,500, he's still a good option to me. Now, he's not at home. He's on the road versus New England. And DVOA-wise, they've actually not been very good versus the run at all. I believe they're second to last. Yeah, 31st, but they're allowing the 5th fewest points per game to the position. Not a lot of rushing touchdown this year, only 93 rushing yards per game. But at his price point, he's going to get the bulk of the work. He can be involved in the passing game a little bit. And he leads the league in rushing touchdowns as well. Now, it's probably not going to continue, but Williams is definitely going to have a decent role in this offense. So $6,500 certainly in play. It's just I hate playing players in games with New England. It's just boring. Dameon Pierce, $6,200. I'm expecting him to be pretty chalky here. Does find himself as a 7-point dog on the road in Jacksonville. And while he hasn't been amazing this year, did rip off that 70 or 80 yard run for a touchdown, I believe. which does inflate the yards per carry to 5.2. But at his price point, he's been good enough to where he's certainly playable. And if you do want to stack Lawrence and Kirk, you could look at it where you want to play Pierce as not really the run back option, but you could stack that game up if you think Houston could potentially be winning that game, even though Vegas would not indicate that, and then you use the Jacksonville passing attack to correlate it. So just one way of looking at it. But if Pierce is going to be chalky, I really like the pivot to Devin Singletary here at $6,100, because normally if you have a running back on an amazing offense like the Buffalo Bills, that's a 14-point home favorite with a 30.25 implied team total, usually we'd be talking about that running back, but I don't think Devin Singletary is going to be that high owned this week. And he's also involved in the passing game too. He did have 11 targets, I believe, in the game versus Miami. I'm not really expecting them to need to do too many dump-offs here. They are 14-point favorites, but he does have a 14.25 target share. The Josh Allen-led offense doesn't get a ton of work on the ground, but he's going to be the RB1 in this offense. And I like that at $6,100. I mean, if he can score some touchdowns, he's definitely worthwhile, especially if he's going to be lower than Dameon Pierce. And then we got a couple cheapies here in the 5K range. We have Stevenson at $5,500. Obviously, both him and Pierce going to get some work, but Stevenson more involved in the passing game, 3.5 targets per game this season with a 12% target share. And also another 5 yards per carry on the season, but I just love the matchup versus Detroit. Their defense has been insanely bad this year, just bleeding points everywhere. Passing game, running game, they've been awful. 32nd DVA versus the run, over 30 points per game at the position, allowing the third most points per game to fantasy running backs and 2 rushing touchdowns per game. So Stevenson, I like him at $5,500. Jeff Wilson might be a little bit safer at $5,500 as well. Don't love the matchup as much versus the Panthers, but they're kind of just middle of the road. But we know he's going to get the bulk of the carries, and if he scores a touchdown, you'll be happy. But if he does not score a touchdown, he's not really that involved in the passing game, so you'll probably be disappointed. So if you're playing Wilson, you basically need that touchdown to pay off. Then moving over to our lineup, there's a lot of options we could go with a running back here. I think the first guy I'm going to plug in is Alvin Kamara. I love Fournette, but since I have Tom Brady, I'm going to go a different direction for this build. And we could play Jamal Williams. I mean, either way is fine, but Kamara gets me a little bit more excited. So we're going to plug him in at $6,600, just taking advantage of that low price point on him. And then since we don't have the Bills passing attack in this one, I think it makes sense to try to at least to get a piece of this offense. So we're going to plug in Devin Singletary. This is not an expensive start. All these guys are in the 6K range, so even after all this, we still have over $5,000 left per player, throwing a cheap defense, and yeah, we can pretty much go whichever direction we would like. And moving on to wide receivers, a pretty long list here. As normal, there's just so many good wide receivers in the NFL, plus we at least have to play 3 of them instead of at least 2 at the running back position. But it really all comes down to who am I stacking, what games am I looking at, who's my run back options with those said stacks, and what quarterbacks am I using. Because we have to correlate our lineups, especially in tournaments, and obviously in cash games. Yes, you can use some of these guys as one-offs, and I'll try to let you know who I think are fine cash game one-offs. But overall, try to do a quick hit here. Because yes, you can break down each and every single matchup, what corners is this guy facing, but honestly, I think that's all a bit noisy. Just correlate your lineups, and a lot of times these wide receivers are going to beat out the opposing defenses more often than not. But anyway, up top, Cooper Kupp. I am not really looking to stack up the Rams. If you have the extra cash, like if you're going cheap with Tom Brady and cash games, it might allow you to afford Cooper Kupp. But outside of that, I am not looking to stack up the Rams. I like Kupp though. I like Higbee, but probably not playing Stafford and really not interested in anybody else on this offense. But we all know how good Kupp is. It's mainly just if you have the money for him, but I don't really see myself personally going there. The Cowboys defense is good enough to where I don't really think this is necessary. Stephon Diggs, though, if you're using Josh Allen, he's going to be the obvious stacking option. And let me pull up these target distributions for you guys because that's probably a little bit more important to look at. But he's been great this year. I mean, 25% target share. Josh Allen's number 1. If you're stacking the Bills, I would highly recommend getting Diggs in, even though he's going to be chalky. Tyreek Hill at $8,000. So I'm not really too interested in this Miami and New York game. It's only a 45.5 point over-under, 3-point spread here, obviously with Tua being injured. I mean, Tyreek's been great this year, though, so I still think you can play him. But $8,000, it's just, I don't personally see myself going with Tyreek this week, but I had to put him on here just because of how great he's been. A.J. Brown, if you're playing Jalen Hurts, he's your obvious pairing option there. Don't forget about Devonta Smith, but he should be able to eat up this Cardinals secondary. 44% market share of the team's air yards this season, and a 32% target share. And if you are stacking that game up, I don't love Hollywood Brown on this slate, but if you want a run back option, he's definitely going to be the guy, and the targets have gone way up since week 1, so I'm liking him. But at that price point, it's a little tough, especially since the Eagles have been pretty solid this year defensively. Mike Evans, if you're using Tom Brady, I'll give you guys a hint. He's going to be in the lineup that we are building here. He just went off last week versus KC. And while his floor is a little bit lower than Godwin most weeks, the ceiling is really high. So in tournaments, he makes a ton of sense. Christian Kirk's a guy I love this week. And if you are using Trevor Lawrence, you basically have to use Christian Kirk because he's been the numero uno there in Jacksonville with a 30.25% target share. Brandon Cooks, he would be your perfect run back option with that Lawrence and Kirk stack. He just gets a ton of targets every single week, and I believe he got into the end zone last week as well. And Chris Godwin at $5,900, incredibly cheap. He got hurt in week 1. I believe he only had 3 targets in that game, so that gets a bit skewed. And then he returned last week, got hurt a couple times, I believe. Still finished the game with 10 targets. But if he's going to be healthy in this one, Chris Godwin's way too cheap. I mean, he's below 6K. He's a guy that has double-digit target upside every single week. This is a very beatable defense versus the Atlanta Falcons. So yeah, I like him a lot. And we're probably going to double stack with Evans and Godwin, to be honest, because we know where the ball's going in this offense. Drake London, he would be your most obvious run back option with that stack. And it also looks like Kyle Pitts is in danger of missing this game. He has not practiced yet this week. We'll see what happens today. I'm recording this early Friday morning. But if he happens to miss, I mean, Drake London's going to get a lot of attention. Now, obviously, the defense can put more attention on London, but he's talented. He's going to get the targets. I mean, he's got 34% target share in the season. I would like him a lot at that price point. Same price as Godwin. Chris Olave is a guy. Michael Thomas, I believe, is currently doubtful, so I'm expecting him to miss. And I believe he leads the league in air yards this year at 673 and 8 out of 18.7 and a 42% market share of the team's air yards. The guy's good. He's a first-round pick for a reason, nearly 9 targets per game. I like him a lot at that price point and a very beatable matchup versus Seattle. I think he's one of those guys you can single off as a one-off in cash games. Todd Lockett's another one of those guys I think you can use at $5,600. Tougher matchup versus the New Orleans Saints, but he's got a 28% target share in the season and over 8 targets per game, and he's catching most of them, and Geno Smith has not been that bad this year at all. Zay Jones at $4,100. If you need a cheap option for Jacksonville, you don't have to use Christian Kirk, and you could double stack. But this is a pretty good spot for him, and he's only $41, and he's seeing 8 targets per game this year with a 23% target share. His price point, he opens some things up. And Rondell Moore, $4,100, returned from injury last week. Didn't really do too much. Did have 5 targets, which was nice. 3 catches, but only for 11 yards. And I believe we got him on the injury report again, but I'm assuming he plays, and if he does, it's a nice price point, but Zay Jones is a little bit more interesting to me. Moving back over to our lineup, like I said, we are just going to stack up this Tampa Bay Atlanta game. And I'm not saying this is my absolute favorite stack on the slate, but just for this build, this is what we are going with, and this is what I would do if I was doing with the Tampa stack. So I'm going to plug in Mike Evans. We're just going to go with the double stack here. We're going to go with Chris Godwin. Both guys are just cheap. I mean, you get Evans below 7K, you get Godwin below 6K, and you have Tom Brady at 6K flat in a matchup versus Atlanta. Nearly 13-point implied team total. It's like, it's hard not to get to. And then Drake London's going to be your obvious run back option. Didn't do anything at all last week versus Cleveland. But if Pitts does end up missing this game, I like him still if Pitts plays. I mean, he's been playing with Pitts all year and he's been all right. But if Pitts is out, I mean, he's just going to get funnel targets. So we're going to roll with this so far. It's $4,200 left. But we got Brady paired with Evans and Godwin, ran back with London, and then Kamara and Singletary. So, I mean, those guys are interchangeable. You don't have to play those 2 running backs. But they're on cheap defense. And yeah, we can make some nice things work here. And moving on to the tight ends, it's not pretty. There's one tight end I like this week. I threw 3 more on here just to have more things to talk about, but it's really just Tyler Higbee for me and everybody else. If you're playing cash games, I'd have a very hard time not playing Higbee. I mean, 9 targets per game, 25.5% target share, 6.5 catches on 61 yards. Like, yeah, he's the safest option of the bunch here. Matchup, I guess, isn't great as a tight end versus Dallas, but I just don't care. He projects the best for me, as you can see. 12.44. I actually think he is my highest predicted tight end on the entire slate. And I mean, his price point at $4,300, yeah, he's going to be the guy I'm playing. Goddard, if you're stacking Jalen Hurts, he's fine to throw in there. Kyle Pitts, if he plays, I'm fine with him. You could take out Drake London if you want and throw in Kyle Pitts, but I don't really want to double stack Atlanta as a run back option. But 18.25 implied team total. If you're a little banged up too, I don't really like Kyle Pitts in the first place. Just never really have. 5.5 targets per game, 33% market share of the team's air yards. Like, I know he's talented, but it just hasn't really been working in this offense. Then Fairmouth, $4,100 with Kenny Pickett at quarterback. It's a little interesting. 7.25 targets per game this year, 23% target share. Buffalo's pretty tough on tight ends, but he's just on here to talk about somebody. I like Tyler Higbee. I would recommend playing Tyler Higbee. And then looking at defenses, the first thing I always do is just scroll to the bottom and see the first viable defense, because there's just no need to spend up for defense. Like, okay, if they get a lucky touchdown, they get a lucky touchdown, but that is just not something you can bank on. But it's not looking like too many great ones down here. I mean, So we have the Browns versus the Chargers. They're only 2.5-point dogs at home. That's not the worst thing you could do, but it doesn't feel great playing a defense versus Justin Herbert. Plus, their defense has been a bit leaky this year. The Commanders versus Tennessee. That's not bad. They're only 2-point dogs, but they're also at home. Jets versus the Dolphins. Not a big fan of that. It's not great. The Cowboys are 5.5-point dogs, only a 43-point over-under though, but they're on the road. So there's a couple of defenses. It's just really whoever fits, I am fine with. I wouldn't say there's a defense you absolutely have to play this week. And heading back over to our lineup, we have 3 more positions here. Tight end, defense. We should be able to afford a decent flex. So $4,200 left per player. We're going to plug in Tyler Higbee here. He's going to be chalky, yes, but he just makes sense at that price point. Now, if Pitts does play, we could take out Higbee, throw in Pitts, change our wide receiver 3 from Drake London. As far as a flex is concerned, let's see. So we have $8,300 left. So if we go around $5,000 to $6,000, that'll leave us with around $2,000 to $3,000 for a defense. So we'll try to stick in this range. There's many options here. A lot of guys that I think are certainly viable on this slate. You could look at Stevenson. You have Jeff Wilson. I would like to try to get a wide receiver, though. I've been a big fan of the wide receiver in the flex spot this year. Brandon Cooks is going to be viable. Where is Chris Olave? Yeah, $5,700. I like Chris Olave a lot. Now, we do have 2 Saints, and if you don't feel too comfortable with that, you could drop off Alvin Kamara if you want. And I kind of want the Commanders' defense in this one. I think Derrick Henry actually might have some decent ownership this week, so we can kind of combat that and just hope that Tennessee absolutely sucks this week. We're 100 over. We can drop off Kamara if you want. It's not a big deal. I mean, I'd like him, yes. But you can throw in Jamal Williams if you want. Or if you wanted to go the Kyle Pitts route instead of Tyler Higbee, we can change our wide receiver 3 there. It's $5,800 left. I guess it would still be Chris Olave, but you could look at Tyler Lockett. But please don't just copy and paste this. There's many ways you can go this week. I'm building several lineups. I'm not sure what I'm going to do yet. This is just an example of what fits and what kind of makes sense for a tournament build. And like I said, we will finish this off with the optimizer, which is available down below in the description. But we're just going to raw dog it here. No settings, no groups. No randomness, just want to see who pops the most as of right now on Friday morning with the projections that I have in place. Now, if you are someone that builds multiple lineups, 20 to 150, yeah, you want to set those groups. You want to get those build settings set up because you're probably not going to do well if you just kind of run this without changing these things at all. And it looks like we got our 152 run here. So let's pull up the players tab and see who's popping. Yeah, lots of Tampa. Chris Godwin, Leonard Fournette, Tom Brady's at the top, lots of Tyler Higbee. A very dangerous amount of Rondale Moore. I could certainly not go that route. I mean, I like him if he plays. It's just that's a lot, 70%. I mean, you definitely have to trim that down. Lots of Christian Kirk, Kamara, Stevenson popped a little bit more than I thought. A lot of Olave. So you're not really too surprised. We pretty much talked about every single one of these players on the player pool. So it's nice when some personal opinion does coincide with the projections for sure. Looking at the teams, lots of Tampa Bay, Los Angeles, New Orleans, Jacksonville. Not surprised there. Looking at some of the games, Tampa, Rams. Yeah, I mean, it all makes sense to me. I don't think there's any real surprises for the most part. With that being said, that's all I got for you guys this week. If you did enjoy, leave a like down below. Subscribe to the channel if you're brand new. We are close to 10K subs. If we can get there this week, I appreciate it. If not, well, hopefully by next week. But thank you all that do subscribe. It means a lot. And if you enjoy the content, I already told you what to do. If you want the extra premium stuff, projections, the optimizer, all that fun stuff, links down below in the description for that. But I'll stop talking. Wish you all the best of luck, and I'll see you all next time.